Newsshooter coverage of Cine Gear 2024 is sponsored by B&H and Atlas Lens Co.
Hi, it's Matt here for Newsshooter.com at the Warner Brothers lot, here with Matt from Panasonic. Now, you've just announced the GH7, obviously
correct.
the follow-up to the GH6 Mark II. Just for people who don't know anything about it, just run through the basics first.
Sure. So this is the replacement for the GH6, as you mentioned. The camera will have a 25 megapixel photo-based sensor that can shoot video in open gate at up to 5.8K. It also will have our phase differential autofocus, or our hybrid phase autofocus system in the camera. It'll be a first for the GH model cameras. Clearly something that GH owners have been asking for a very long time. But I think the most exciting aspects of this camera, number one, we'll be able to do to the CF Express card slot or over USB to an SSD, ProRes RAW video at up to 5.7K and up to 30 frames per second. We can also do C4K at up to 60 frames per second in ProRes RAW. The second thing we'll be able to do is 32-bit float audio with the device I have right here. It'll require the XLR2, which is our new XLR audio adapter. This adapter has 3 inputs, 4 channels. So you get XLR1, XLR2, 3.5 millimeter with an additional 2 channels, and all 4 channels can be 32-bit float. And then the feature that we didn't let anybody know, and that's why there were no leaks out there. So we've also struck up a licensing agreement with a company, I don't know if you've heard of them, Arri. So we've actually licensed Arri Log C3. So with the GH6 and the GH7, for $200 US, you can pay to unlock Arri Log C3 in both the GH7 and GH6.
Okay, so let's go back and talk about that last one first, Arri Log C3. This is the first time I believe Arri's ever licensed it outside to anybody else. Now, their workflow is completely different to how most other people do everything. You know, it's a log-to-log workflow. So you're placing your LUT at the end of your image chain.
Right.
So it's a lot easier and more versatile to grade. How are you fitting in terms of the dynamic range that the GH7 has into that Arri Log C3 curve?
So to be clear, we don't have the dynamic range of an Alexa LF or an Alexa. So you're going to still have to work within the dynamic range limitations of our sensor. With that said, the curve and the wide color gamut are identical, or as close to identical as we can make the color in this particular product. You're not going to get the greater than 14, 15 stops of latitude that an Alexa LF is capable of. We're going to be a little more than 13, about 13.4 stops of dynamic range on the highlight end with this camera, but it will definitely exhibit a different look than Vlog because of where Arri prioritizes middle gray. They bring their middle gray down lower than we do. We're usually at about a 42 IRE for middle gray. They come down to 39 IRE, preserving more highlight information. So ultimately, you're still going to get more highlight information with theirs than you would with ours, just because of that.
So once you reach a certain point on the curve, I take it you end up just clipping the highlights.
Exactly. You will reach a clipping point. And clearly every camera, at some point, you're going to reach a clipping point. We're just going to be a little bit lower than what they're capable of.
Now, because of that curve too, is the base ISO when using C-Log 3 different from that of Vlog?
Yeah, so the base ISO on the GH7 will be, in Vlog, it'll be ISO 500. I do want to point something out to your audience, though. You're not getting worse ISO 2000 performance than the GH6. GH6 and GH7, same ISO 2000 performance. We're just cleaning up the shadows because we get you down to ISO 500. In Log C3, it's going to be a base ISO of 320.
So this is the first time 32-bit audio has ever been included in a camera. Why is this the first time?
Well, technically, we have to say it's the first time in a mirrorless camera that someone's incorporated 32-bit float. Honestly, I don't know why it's been an oversight in the industry. We view this camera as a single shooter, powerhouse product. Somebody's doing documentary work. We just felt like 32-bit float would make their entire workflow so much easier. I mean, poor Eric here is doing our interview right now. He's having to monitor my levels and your levels and making sure that we match. And once you have 32-bit float, it takes a lot of that off the shoulders of that single shooter. So
for people doing event coverage, documentaries, concerts, that sort of thing, this would be very handy.
Yeah, I think doc work, I think any run and gun work, this is going to be awesome. I think if there's a news organization out there that wants that shallower depth of field kind of cinema look, this makes that workflow a heck of a lot easier, especially since a lot of news outlets right now are relying on camera talent to be the camera operator. There's far fewer camera operators today, so they can just make sure that there's no scratchy mic, get in front of the camera, and they don't have to deal with setting levels anymore.
And the 32-bit float recording is available in RAW, internal recording, all modes.
So if you set the camera into the MOV option or the ProRes options, you will have access to RAW. The 32-bit float. You won't have it in the MP4 option in the camera.
Okay, now in terms of, also you talked about being able to shoot ProRes RAW internally, there's also ProRes codecs and obviously your AVC Intra codecs as well.
Well, not AVC Intra, but our all Intra codecs will be there. So the ones that people would expect from like the GH5 and the GH6 before it. So we have, long GOP codecs, we have IPB codecs, which is our all Intra codecs. The Panasonic codecs cover everything up to about a 600 megabit encode, and most of those can be done to the SD card. Once we get above that, that's when ProRes and ProRes HQ and ProRes RAW come into play. SD card slot's really only good for ProRes at like 1080 at that point. All the 4K ProRes and ProRes RAW, that'll all go to the CF Express card or to the external USB SSD drive.
Yeah, so speaking of that, there's a USB-C you can output to an external SSD drive up to 2 terabytes, I believe.
Yeah, so we can handle up to a 2 terabyte external SSD. Just plug it right into the USB-C port, and Bob's your uncle. You're ready to record ProRes RAW to that device. I do want to point out something that I know GH6 users are going to say. When we use that, that means you can no longer power the camera over USB, right? And so that's a frustration, and we feel your pain, believe me. So we've developed a new battery eliminator. It's a little battery that goes into the battery port, and what it'll do is give you a pigtail of a USB-C out, and it uses 9-volt 3-amp USB PD. So you can now use external power solutions and still use the USB drive at the same time. And that adapter, incredibly expensive. It's going to be $39.99.
Okay, and in terms of just going back to Arri Log C3 for a minute, I take it that's only available in the non-RAW modes for obvious reasons.
Well, so you won't, because RAW is RAW, we don't have any sort of licensing agreement with Arri to use the Log C as the reference for post. So yes, it'll still be Vlog when doing ProRes RAW.
And you were saying before, there's a lot of people out there who maybe aspire to maybe owning an Arri camera, later on in their career or whatever. So being able to use the Arri workflow, I guess, gets them sort of interested in moving towards that direction.
Well, honestly, the Arri log workflow is the Hollywood workflow, right? Even if you're doing film-based projects, like if you're J.J. Abrams and you're scanning in film stock, you're scanning into Cine as your workflow, and that's what Arri has built this entire workflow around. So to make sure people understand, Panasonic with Vlog, our vision for Vlog is that you issue a LUT that gets you a good starting point, and then you adjust your lift gamma gain, add some creative effect LUTs, things like that, and then you kick out that project. Arri's workflow is designed for efficiency. So what Arri does is they say, let's shoot in log. Do not apply the technical LUT that puts it into the proper gamma and color space. Instead, set your monitor to monitor in that workflow, that color space and that gamma, and then do all your color grade applied to the log profile. And then at the very end, once you've got it all dialed in, everybody's agreed that we like this color, at the very end you apply your LUT. And that gives you a couple of benefits. One, you just have more latitude because you haven't graded in 709, you're grading in Arri Log and the wide gamut. But for speed of workflow, if you're doing a project that's going to be in a theater, well, it could be in a Dolby Vision theater in HDR, or it could be in a non-HDR theater, which means you have 2 deliverables. And then you're going to eventually deliver it to Netflix, and that's going to be an HDR deliverable on its own. And then you may want to deliver it to regular TV in a 709. This means that all I have to do is remove the HDR, Rec 2020, I plug in the Rec 709, give the project a very simple one pass, and I'm ready to kick out that 709 project. It's all about efficiency of deliverable and maximizing the look and color that you have in the camera.
And this camera will work with the new app that you just released along with the S9 as well.
Yeah, so on the other end of the spectrum, obviously, not cinematographers, but when we're talking about consumers or people who have to turn projects quickly for social media, the Lumix Lab app is an awesome app. First off, it runs on 5 gigahertz, so it's very fast to transfer photos and MP4 video files. But the cool thing is that you have the ability in the app to have access to like video editing functions, to crop out your verticals and horizontals so that you can change your deliverables for different applications. And then for color, it has practically every tool that you could ever ask for, split tone, the whole 9 yards. Effectively anything that could be encoded into a LUT, that color adjustment is in our app. And this means that you can take a photo file, tweak it, adjust it, get the look you want. Obviously save that photo to post to Instagram, but then you can take that and export a LUT and wirelessly put it right into your camera as well. And those are dot cube LUTs in they're 33 cube LUTs, so they are finishing LUTs ready to go.
Now, in terms of pricing and availability, when's this going to be available? How much is it going to cost, and how much is the XLR module?
Yeah, so the camera will ship sometime mid-July to consumers. This camera is going to sell for $21.99, so it launches at the exact same price as the GH6 did when we brought that out. The XLR2 will be available for $499, so there is a $100 premium. To be fair, it's been 8 years since the XLR1 came out, and this has double the D to A converters, so we didn't charge you double the price for it.